many of you had been here when it was the Omni? How many of you were here when it was the Magnificent? Right? And this is amazing. This is amazing. So I'm going to invite Liz to come greet you all and welcome you all to the hotel.
Hello. How's everyone tonight? Good. I'm so glad you're here. I'm the general manager here at the hotel. My name is Elizabeth Parker. We have purchased this hotel. Actually, our anniversary is on Wednesday. We'll be here a year. One of the great things that we aspire to do is invest in cities and districts that we believe are going to be profitable. So, thank you very much. We have over 75 full-time employees, which is really awesome. That's a great opportunity. So, being that we're generating revenues for the area, and we spent a little over $16 million just in renovating this hotel. So, thank you for being here, and we look forward to helping you do what you guys do best. Thank you so much.
And the restaurant is good.
Yes. Burger Theory is very good.
Thank you. I've had several events here, and now we'll be having another event here this summer that is campaign related, so we'll talk about that offline, but look forward to coming back. The food is amazing, like she said, and it's a great opportunity. We do have some beverages in the back. As you get thirsty, please join. Feel free to grab some. I don't think I can take it with me, so enjoy. But again, I wanted to welcome you. I want to give a special shout out to Tempest Boone, who will be recording so that we can put this on IGTV and YouTube for those that couldn't make it this evening. Or if you were like, what did she say about that? You can always go back to refer to it. If you have a question that you do not want to ask while this is being recorded, I will be here afterwards, and you can always come up to me and do that, or we can set up an office hours appointment for you so that there is that opportunity for some private space. So if everyone has an agenda, this is very important to me because it keeps me on track. I am a politician. I can talk for days. This keeps us out on time. So we're going to do a welcome. I will more officially welcome some folks, and we're going to go over, there are a lot of new faces in the room. I've had several town halls, but some of you may be here because of some map changes. You might be some new friends, or this may be your first town hall. Either way, I will go over some of how I kind of handle forums and town halls. Then we'll talk about some of the legislation that happened during the 2019 legislative session. Some of the behind-the-scenes stories that may not have made it to the paper, but I'm not going to spill all of the tea. So if you are here for any of the salacious details of scandals and such, not tonight. This is about legislation and what's going to directly impact your life starting July 1st. And then I will give some more information based on the pre-session town hall that we had in January to update you on where we are on some of those topics. Then I'll talk about a few next steps, but I really look forward to any and all questions that you may have. So on the back of your agenda, there is space for notes, but also if you have a question, jot it down. I don't want you to forget it. I want to make sure that you leave with the answers that you came for. So, my name is Delegate Marcia Price. I was born and raised in Newport News. I am a 4th generation resident of Newport News. This is my home. For real, where our roots are. I was just at a church earlier today, First Church of Newport News Baptist. And my great-grandfather founded that church. And prior to Newport News joining up with Warwick County, that was the first form of organized religion in Newport News. So when I say roots, I mean roots. And so it really drives me to do all that I can to make sure that Newport News and the 95th District are the best that they can be, and that you all are getting everything that you need out of your government. I began serving in the House of Delegates in 2016, so I am toward the end of my 2nd term. And my committees are Health, Welfare, and Institutions, that's what HWI means, General Laws, and then P&E stands for Privileges and Elections. So I serve on all 3 of that. And then there's more juicy bits, and you can go to the website. My website is delegatemarciaprice.com, and then you can kind of play around, and then my bio is right there where it says About Marcia. The 95th District has changed. How many of you are here for the first time because you live in what is, as of earlier this year, was considered the 94th district. Welcome, 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 welcome. Teacher, may I get you some? So, this is the revised version. And so, the green is the 95th. As of today, I still represent the citizens that live in the 95th district as was enacted in 2011. So if you live in Hampton, if you live in Bethel, Tucker Caps, and Sandy Bottom, I am still your delegate. This map goes into effect for the election this year. So if you currently live in the 94th district and you voted in the 94th district for the last election, you technically are still represented by the 94th delegate. And then for the next election, whoever takes the oath in January of 2020, that will be your delegate moving forward that day forward. So I'm very open. If you live anywhere near Hampton, Newport News, call me if you need any help. But just to let you know, who was your delegate at the beginning of the year is still your delegate until a new person takes the oath in January. So thank you. This is the 93rd, and then this is the 94th. So these are the changes, and we'll leave that out in case you want to look and find your street and see where you may be on the map. Thank you so much. So with these changes, yes.
Marcia, I think you just went right over my head.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
Do you want me to say that in a different way?
well, let me ask a question. So the change begins, it hasn't started yet?
The map that was enacted by the courts is for the next election. So yes, it has not begun yet as a serving map. It is the elections map. So you can look at it, and you can look at the sheet that I gave you about the precincts that are included. That is for November and June. But that person hasn't been chosen yet to represent the new map. So you don't really have a delegate for the new district yet. So as a citizen, your delegate that you started the year off with is who you go to for constituent services. As a voter, you can look at the new map to know where you will go and who will be on your ballot.
All right, so you're gonna be running in November. We vote, you get elected, you're our new delegate.
The first day of session when I take my oath for that next term.
Okay.
Yes, so I finish out my term for the map I was elected to in 2017.
Clear as mud, but it covers the ground.
Right, yes, ma'am.
The voter card that we have now reflects what that status.
The voter card that you have now reflects your constituency, like who you're a constituent of. And then you won't get a new voter card just yet, and I'll talk about that because there's still one big ball still up in the air about redistricting. But as soon as everything is finalized, you would get a new voter card for your new district. We'll revisit this because I see some hesitant nods. But these district changes were made to fix racially gerrymandered lines, and that was the court order. The big ball that is still in the air is if the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, gets involved, they have the option to overturn it, and then we would go back to the map before the changes. So they have a deadline of the end of June. So any day now, we could hear whether or not they're going to get involved and overturn what the federal courts did, or stay out of it, saying, I'm not going to get into the details, but they can say a couple of different things for why they didn't get involved. So I really, really, really need you all to pay attention, because you guys are going to have to answer some questions for your friends, because it's just so confusing. But my social media, my emails, all of that, please, even if you don't live in the 95th today or next year, if you want to stay engaged on that, I will definitely be sending out more information. But we are supposed to live our lives today as if the federal court decision is in place and the new map is coming, and so that's why we're sharing the information with you. But those changes do affect the 2019 elections for the term that would begin in 2020. So I just want to give you a quick refresher because some of us took civics a little longer ago than others. But this is the process for how a bill becomes a law. It is introduced by a delegate or a senator, and then it's assigned to a committee. This goes through as if it started with the House of Delegates, because that's what I'm in. It's assigned to a committee and a subcommittee. If you successfully get it out of the subcommittee, it then goes to the committee, and then once it goes to the committee, it goes to all 100 of us on the House of Delegates floor. We vote on it, and then if it passes that, it then crosses over and goes to the Senate. Then it goes back through the process where it's assigned to the committee, passes the committee, then it passes the Senate, and then once it has passed both houses of the legislature, it then goes to the governor for action. The governor can take one of 4 actions. I usually give a quiz, but we're moving pretty quickly to make up some time. The governor can sign it. The governor can veto it. The governor can propose amendments. The governor can also take no action, which means that the bill would automatically become law as of July 1st. So those are the 4 options. And this is how a bill becomes a law. This is a picture from the General Laws Committee. I am newly appointed to the, or newly assigned to the General Laws Committee for this term. So I am sitting on the bottom row there, but I get to sit beside Delegate Jay Jones from Norfolk, and we have a great time. He's a really, really sharp guy, and we can discuss some things while we're hearing from those that testify. And that's the podium right here, where you would have the ability to come speak. Because in this trajectory of a bill becoming a law, the time that we hear from our constituents is usually in the subcommittee for the House. Now this is our full committee meeting, but that is the time that we get to hear from citizens on whether they support or oppose a piece of legislation and their input on why. So subcommittee meetings are very, very, very important. Legislation and this whole thing that I'm talking about is a year-long process. A lot of us, we register to vote, we show up to vote, and then we go about our merry way. I want to change that culture. I want you to understand how important it is to stay engaged the entire time. So voting is just a step in the process. So legislation, there is the sponsoring of it. I get to speak on it from the House floor. There's the advocating for it. I can speak at press conferences or whatever, letting people know why I'm supporting something or why I'm not. And then of course there's the voting. But that's just one piece. There's also the engagement. These folks are from the Interfaith Center for Public Policy. I worked with them on a bill that I'll talk about. These are some amazing youth from Hampton and Newport News, and they are with the Silence Empowers Violence Action, community action teams, and they're trying to fight the forces of the no snitching culture that's preventing cases from being solved and preventing justice by saying, actually, if you stay silent, you are empowering that violence. So we worked with them, and then I get consistent visits every year from the Girl Scouts, who are an amazing bunch of more than just entrepreneurs, because I know some of you just know them from cookie sales, but they do even so much more. But we do like when they show up so we can buy some cookies. But yeah, partnerships, we turn ideas into action, and then we're consistent. And then I repeated this picture because we get results when we work together year-round. Like I said, we're working with the Interfaith Center for Public Policy. We got a bill passed that removed antiquated language from the code that gave certain exemptions to certain jobs from the minimum wage requirement. The Virginia Minimum Wage Act went into effect in 1975. The language that is included was straight out of Jim Crow's playbook. And we were able to pull some of those exemptions out that were historically held by African Americans, and that was the only reason why they were exempt. And so some pieces of legislation are to fix what was done wrong, right? And then here, we have a group of Hampton citizens, because today I still represent 3 precincts in Hampton. And this is a bill that I carried in 2017, created a volunteer inspector program, and this was the first graduating class that's on the trajectory of going into that program, so I got to meet them and speak with them. And then bringing change. How many of you know a little bit about school loan debt? So I know a lot about it personally. So I went to 2 out-of-state private HBCUs for my education, and decided to try for 2 graduate programs. So I know a little bit about Navient. I know a little bit about monthly payments. Well, I want you to also know that education loans are second in the state only to mortgage debt. And some of the exploitive practices of loan servicers are not regulated as highly as mortgages, even though there is such a significant amount of debt. And so we've been working on that. We got the first, to our knowledge, the first student loan reform bill passed in 2018, and it established an office for an ombudsman, so that when you need information about repaying your loans, no matter how old the loan may be, if you are a Virginian with education loans, you can go to this person in this office in order to get information. Why would that be important to be able to go to this person for information as opposed to other sources? If I call Navient and ask them a question and I know that they're not regulated, are they going to give me unbiased, honest information, or are they going to describe a forbearance in nice and flowery words so that I say, yeah, that's what I want. I just want some time off from paying my loan. And then your principal ends up going up by $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, right? This is a biased, unbiased source of centralized information. So if you are a Virginian with student loans, please see me afterwards and I can give you the information. They are housed within Chev, who handles a lot of the higher education stuff in the state. We got that bill passed in 2018 and we're still fighting. So the 2019 legislative session is what we call it, but it began on January 19th at 12 noon. It is scheduled to last 45 calendar days, but we did go that one extra day so that we could get a more responsible budget passed for you all. And every Monday through Friday for those days, we meet at 12 noon in the House and the Senate in order to do our business, but the committees meet morning, afternoon, outside of that time. So if you live more than 55 miles away, you have the option of living in Richmond. So I live in Richmond during that time so that I can be there bright and early, especially for those 7:30 committee meetings. 7:30 in the morning committee meetings, and so we don't have to go back and forth, and we just actually reside there during that time. In odd number years, it is considered to be a short session, and then in even number years, it goes to 60 days, and we go into March. Okay? And then that's when the bills were sent to the governor for action, and then the governor took action, and then we went back. So April 3rd, we went for reconvened session, or you might call it veto session, and that's so that we could respond to the actions of the governor. So we took actions, then the governor took actions, and then we took action on that, and then guess what? It's not done just yet. The governor has until May 3rd to take some final action. So let me give you an example. In the legislative session, both the House and the Senate pass a bill. It goes to the governor. The governor says, this is cool, but I want to add a little bit to it. So here is a proposed amendment. So then on April 3rd, we heard the proposed amendment. If that proposed amendment passed, the bill went on. July 1st, as amended, it will become law. If we rejected that amendment, it doesn't automatically get vetoed, it goes back to the governor. And the governor can then sign it in its original form without the amendment or veto it. Everybody with me? Okay. So May 3rd is our next date that we're going to keep our eyes and ears open to see what bills may have completely died by being vetoed or what bills may have been passed. Additional bills may have been passed because the governor just signed the bills as they originally came forward. Any questions? Great. Okay. So then my legislative action, I had 13 bills that I introduced. Because of the current composition of the General Assembly, I do not base my success on the number of bills that I passed, because some of the bills that I passed died on arrival. So I put up a bill that said that municipal buildings that are owned by the city the city should be able to say, or the city or the county should be able to say, if guns are allowed in those buildings. So if I work in City Hall, do people come say hi to me at my job because they love me? Or because there's probably a problem that they're seeking to get answered? Once we, I believe, enter a firearm into that situation that may have already been contentious, we are taking some serious risks. Why not allow them to decide? So that bill was dead on arrival. So I'm not going to stop fighting for something just because I know that other people disagree with me when I think it's important. So there were a couple of those bills in there, but I did get 5 bills passed, which we'll talk about. And then, did you all remember hearing about Aqua Vista and their air conditioning being out? Okay. So I got a tag on the Wavy post about it. Tempest and I were at work. We didn't even know what was going on. I got this notification. They were like, Zia, I think this is your district. So I read into it. Tempest heads right out. I finish up what I was doing. We head out. Basically, what we thought was the air conditioning went out that day was the air conditioning had been out for a year. And these people were paying rent and being promised air conditioning in their lease. That's not cool. That's not cool, right? Not only that, when we get there, the babies are exhausted. They're hot. We're giving them ice cream, pumping them fluids. Can you imagine cooking if it's 85 degrees in your apartment? Can you imagine doing anything other than yelling at each other because you're so irritable, right? I mean, it's crazy to think that this was going on, but it was. And as we started investigating what could be some actions, I'm in the legislative body, so I don't enforce anything. So I'm asking questions, how can we prevent this situation through legislation? We found out when the property manager was fixing the situation that you only had to cool a room to 80 degrees. 80 degrees. That is all you had to do. That was all that's required of you. If you own property and you're leasing or renting your property, and you say, I provide cooling, you are only responsible to cooling the room to 80 degrees. And I found that unconscionable because at that time I lived in an apartment complex, a little thing called Venture, out by Tech Center. And I know for 100% fact, if it was only being cooled to 80 degrees in my apartment, I'm making a call, and I would probably have somebody at my apartment within 30 minutes, because it's unthinkable, right? So why should lower income housing complexes not have that same right? And so we fought for that. Now, here's where I learned something that was stated in regulations, not in the code. What's the difference? The code is in the legislative body. Regulations were in the executive branch. So what did we do? We took it to the executive branch, and we went before the Board of Housing and Community Development. And we fought for an emergency regulation for the 80 degrees to be changed to 77. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a big difference. And they enacted that emergency regulation, and I think by now, the governor's office, the attorney general's office, and the budget folks have signed off on it so that it is in place now for this summer, for 18 months, while the board goes through the full vetting process to permanently change that regulation. So we don't just get to put in a bill and say, okay, it's done. We got to follow it through if we really want to bring the results for the constituents that we serve. So that is one of the temporary successes that we have. Yes?
77 is not comfortable. Why not make it 72 or lower?
So sometimes you realize what you're up against and you go for what you can get. I do not believe that there would be an appetite for it to be that low based on the decision makers at the table at this time. So I tried to go for what we could get. Then we had 2 major resolutions. That wonderful picture of those students, the Silence Empowers Violence community action teams. We got the 3rd full week of September designated as Silence Empowers Violence Community Awareness to Action Week for all of Virginia. So these Hampton and Newport News teenagers brought me an idea, and we turned it into a statewide awareness campaign. And that was done through passing a House resolution. Another resolution that we had, a House joint resolution, which means the House and the city pass it. A House resolution that I also worked on. This year is the 35th year that African American women have been serving in the legislature. 35th year. So we were commemorating that. Just to give you some perspective, don't forget Virginia is celebrating 400 years this year. Just for some perspective. But that all started with then Delegate Yvonne Miller in 1983. Also, for some perspective, that is within my lifetime. Okay. Still got some work to do. But a lot of the bills that I worked on were focusing on justice, equity, and opportunity. Some of the other bills of note, this is where I want to come back to, if we will, because I want to tailor the information to your interests, since we lost a little bit of time, but we will come back to this based on what some of your interests are so we can discuss some of those bills. On the bottom of the front of your agenda, there should be a website that says something about looking up bills, lis.virginia.gov. You can go to that. I'll show you. Yeah, we'll come back to that, and we'll search some bills. But that's where every single bill that was introduced, whether it passed or failed, there's information on it. You can see the votes that we took, who took what, who said what. You can watch video from when it was being presented, all the way through which bills have already become law, because there were some that have already become law, and then those that will become law. But most bills that passed will become law July 1st. That's the big day. So, why is it important to vote in state level elections? Yes. Why else? Specific to the date. This, what we did January, February, came back to do in April, is going to touch your life July 1st. They're all important. All elections are important. Some of our pre-survey survey results, if you didn't get a chance to fill this out, it's okay. You still have time for the next session. But this is kind of what were the top issues that were on people's minds for the 95th district before session. We had healthcare, justice, education, reducing crime, and economy and jobs. So that just gives you a little snapshot of what people in the 95th district that took this survey were thinking about. And then in the 2019 pre-session town hall that we had, which was in January, we covered these 4 topics. We covered the economy and tax policy. So I want to report back. We heard from a nice gentleman, Michael Cassidy. Whew, oh my God. Michael Cassidy from the Commonwealth Institute. And they run all kinds of numbers, and they're amazing people because I am not a numbers person. But once you tell me the numbers, I'm a solutions-oriented person to fix the numbers that aren't quite right. So one of the numbers that we found out, and this is what this chart is showing, is that the lower amount that you make, the higher your rate of taxes. So you might be in what's considered to be the lower 50%, but if you look at all of the taxes, including sales tax, excise tax, all of that, not just income and not just property tax, you're paying probably about 9.8%. Top 10%, between 7 and 8%. That's a problem. That's a problem. So we were able to use the data that they had to have significant conversations about this. Let me tell you a story. This was a day that I was not planning to speak. You can tell because I have on stripes. If anybody works in TV, they tell you, don't wear stripes on TV. I was like, cool, I don't have any speeches today, but I really like this dress. I'm gonna wear it today. But no, I could not stay in my seat. Once one of my colleagues said, why should we be giving money back to people who don't pay taxes? And I knew that he was only talking about income tax and property tax. So within my district, if I have a ton of apartments, you're talking about people that live in the 95th district that don't own property. But when they go to that store and they buy food for their family, they are paying taxes, right? And significantly, a lot of their income gets paid out, right? So I couldn't sit there and just let that go. Happened to have a little chart from the information that we had discussed in previous meetings, and I was able to speak about this. One of the other things that happened is that this was after February 1st. Everybody knows what happened February 1st in the state of Virginia, right? I frame it as it was the moment that racial equity got catapulted to the forefront of statewide conversations. Finally. I get to talk about black people without being too black. Not, but just about a photo. It was about uncovering and excavating the ways that Black people are treated with inequities all throughout the code. How we tax is in our code. And then that's not just Black, that's Black, brown, that's all Latinx, Asian, men, women, it's all intertwined. And so we were able to have a conversation about intersectionality, how race, economics, and gender all come together. And it came out in the most boring of conversations. Y'all don't even watch those days when we're talking about tax conformity. That's not abortion, gay marriage. Y'all don't even tune in for tax talk. But it was an important discussion, and I can send you the link to watch the full spectrum of arguments. But basically, what started it was the federal tax changes, right? And then we had, as a state, to decide, are we going to conform to the federal? How are we going to respond to those changes? That's why this conversation even came about. Tax bills, we usually just pass that with like, perfunctory, yes, we gotta get taxes. We gotta pay for stuff, right? But this was one of the most important conversations that happened this session. The Legislative Black Caucus joined together and decided we didn't like what was going on the taxation side or the budget side. So the taxation is when we get your hard-earned tax dollars and it comes in. And the budget, half of the budget is how we're gonna spend it, right? Everybody works hard, most days. That tax money comes into us. You buy food, we get tax dollars. You buy off the internet, you're supposed to tell us, and we're supposed to get taxes, right? So then the budget part is how it goes out. We saw inequities in both parts. So we took a stand, and we killed the original Senate Bill 1372. Now, I am low on the totem pole, right? There's 100 delegates. I think at that time my ranking was like 71. I'm like, I just got in. But now all of a sudden, people want to talk to me. They want to have a conversation. And a few of us were actually invited into the Speaker's office along with Chairman Chris Jones of the Appropriations Committee. And we had a very important conversation. If we're not going to change how the money comes in, because tax reform was going to take more than a 10-minute conversation, right? Then let's talk about how the money is spent. And we got millions more for at-risk add-on in education, which is money that goes to schools that have high percentages of students who are impoverished. We got more money for the Housing Trust Fund, which is dollars that go into secure housing for families who are impoverished. And there were other things that were on our list that we used our power to negotiate, because we couldn't continue. And once the Band-Aid has been ripped off, we're not gonna pretend like it hasn't. We're gonna take the opportunity to have the conversations that we've been not having for so long. And one thing that I want to point out, especially for my friends that may not know me beyond this year, a lot of race talk happened because it could. It's not the only thing that we're focused on. I didn't pass the bill on student loans just for Black student loans, right? But when we are fighting for people that oppression is hitting the hardest, it helps everybody. It helps everyone. And we honestly, when you look at 90% of people versus the top 10%, we have a lot more in common with each other. If you, I'm not mad if you do, but if you don't own a yacht, we probably have more in common than not, right? And a lot of people, whether they can pay their rent or not, we're probably 1 or 2 paychecks away from each other's reality tops. And so we gotta start looking toward each other as opposed to always looking up to get to that next level and see what we can do to make sure that it's better for everyone. So this is a space for equity work, and we're gonna continue that. We also talked about the student debt crisis, of which I just mentioned. This is a press conference that we had with Progress Virginia, the Virginia Education Association, because here's what's the deal. If I'm a school counselor or a teacher or a parent, and I'm pushing my child to go into higher education, I would hope that it's because I think it's going to better their life, so that when they get out, they can be even better than me. Generational excellence, right? That next generation, we're gonna push them to do better. But if they're coming out with $100,000 in debt and can't even get a job where they can afford their monthly payment, and they are back in your basement, and we all living together, we all figuring out dinner schedules and shower schedules, that's not betterment, right? And so until we kind of get this affordability and debt crisis in check, it's got to force us to talk about some of these trades that are paying better than some of the jobs that our college degrees can get. So it's forcing an elevation of some really good jobs that have not had the respect that they deserve because you don't need a college degree. So we need to talk about both college affordability, both erasing the school debt crisis that is crippling a lot of people's ability to interact with our economy in the ways which we want them to. We don't have disposable income. They just took $500 out of my check, right? So I'm not buying cars. How many of you know somebody in the millennial generation who is not a one-off, like, inherited money? How many of you know millennials that own homes? The fact that you have to think, and you're going through the Rolodex, first of all, what's a millennial, right? Do I know any? That is a problem, because by my age, both my parents and grandparents had owned homes. I do not. It'll be a while. It'll be a while. But that is just, we are not able to participate in the economy in the ways in which previous generations were able to. We have got to look at that. We also need to respect the trades. I get to meet with the Newport News shipbuilding, the shipyard, a lot because they're in my district. And the apprentice school is in my district. And every time I hear them talk, I'm like, I wish y'all had come by my high school and I knew that you existed, right? What electricians and plumbers, like, and they're using some of the coolest technology and all of this. I mean, it's so cool. You got people working for NASA. Not everybody at NASA has a PhD, but they're doing important work that has international impact. And we have got to start changing the way that we talk about some of these things and the service industries and everything, because it takes all kinds. College isn't for everybody. We don't want everybody coming out with debt. So we need to work on all of that at the same time. But here, there's also space for equity work when we see that 1 in 3 African Americans defaults on their school loans within the first 5 years. First 5 years. So there's problems. We're pushing people into situations that they may not even need to go to, may not be ready for. We need to start thinking about how we may be contributing to those issues. And do know that once you default on a school loan, it is harder than bankruptcy to get away from, right? We got a call in from an 85-year-old woman whose disability check was being garnished for a family member that she helped co-sign for a loan. We got some problems we need to work on. We also talked about maternal health. Maternal health. How many of you have heard of Judge Glenda Hatchett? Okay. Have you heard of her daughter-in-law's story? She died after giving birth to her child. Right? You've heard of Serena Williams, the tennis star. Did you hear her story of pregnancy? Beyonce might have had a few complications that we've heard about. Sometimes when stars talk about things, it raises awareness, and sometimes we think, oh, it must just be, them. Actually, African American women in Hampton Roads are 3 times more likely to die, either while pregnant, while giving birth, or within the first year after they've delivered their child. But we're also voting to take away contraception and the access to other forms of reproductive health care. Put that adjacents are waiting longer to have children, but it shouldn't matter. So Delegate LaSharice Aird and I got together and we did a couple of things. We put in a resolution to raise awareness about the facts that are happening in Virginia, because Richmond, Petersburg, and some parts of Northern Virginia, that urban crescent, we have alike numbers. We wanted to also put some dollars to the problem. There was $50,000 in the introduced budget for this. $50,000 out of a $310 billion budget. So we got $315,000 more dollars added to that, and that will go to an organization that is a collaboration of organizations working on maternal health. First, to make sure we have good data, so we know why is it happening, and then second, to address what's happening, okay? So that is coming up. And to be clear, there was a reporting on the establishment of a maternal mortality review team. Did y'all see that? Maternal mortality review team. That only codified it. To be clear, these people have been doing great work since the 80s. So I think there was a little bit of miscommunication around it. We did not establish it this year. We put it in the code so that it won't go away. But they've been doing good work since the 80s, and we just need to fund them better so they can do even better work. But that's also a space for equity. I do want to be clear. When I uplift Black women dying, it's not because I don't care about other women dying. It's because of this chart. The orange is white, the pink is black, the purple is other races. That is a glaring problem. And so we're going to attack all of the deaths because one death is too many. But we have to address the iniquities so that we can attack it in the right way. And then this is infant deaths. This is Virginia per 1,000 live births. This is Newport News. This is Newport News African American. Hampton African American. Virginia Beach African American. We've got to address issues that are occurring, but we first have to acknowledge that they're occurring. And so that's why you hear a lot about Black maternal health, because there are so many of these iniquities. But we need to get all of those lines down so that our babies can be born healthy, our mothers and women who are pregnant, people who are pregnant can get through their full pregnancy, and families can live and be healthy and happy and live out their dreams. And so that's what we're working on. And if you follow me on social media, you know I'm a little bit of a census nerd. Just a little bit, right? Maybe a lot of it. One of the things that I have taken up this year in our introduced budget, we had $1.5 million for census outreach. The census is truly an accounting of who lives in our state. I did not think that was a partisan struggle, but the money was removed. We fought to get it back. The money was removed. There is $0 in our state budget toward census outreach. Why is that a problem? Because the census is a federal undertaking. There was a government shutdown that put us behind. There's also some serious other dysfunction. I'll stop there. We can't rely on the federal government for much of anything right now, and a lot of the decisions are coming down to the state level. California put $30 million behind their census, state dollars. Now I know we're not California, but 1.5 billion out of a big old billion, you know, that would have actually been half of what we needed to do the bare bones outreach. But we did not get that. But the importance of the census, we have apportionment. How many congressional members are there in the United States Congress? 435 voting members. They're actually 441 because 6 don't vote. But they're 435 voting members. That number is not going to change. Guess what does? How many each state gets based on population. So if we are not counting all of our people, we may be losing a representative even though we actually have the people that need to be represented. Remember I told you about the districts being drawn. The second thing is redistricting. How those lines are drawn for congressional and state is based on population. We have 100 House of Delegates. We're not adding any more just because we have more people, right? So 8.3 million from the last census, chopped into 100 districts, we all represent about 83,000. How many people may not be counted will affect how those lines are drawn. The third is, in 2015, $675 billion was given out nationally from federal agencies based on census data. Virginia got 18 billion based on census data. If we get undercounted, we could lose representation at the federal level. have jacked up lines on the state level, we could lose real dollars. Now let's say SNAP is a part of that. So is highway transportation. Anybody enjoying the new segment on 64 expansion? My trips up and back to Richmond are a lot smoother, at least on one or two of those segments. Looking forward to the rest getting completed. Federal dollars. Healthcare. There's so much that goes into that. So let's say for SNAP. Do children stop needing food because they weren't counted on the census? That's not how it works, right? So if our children go uncounted, the locality will be the one that has to make up the difference if we lose federal dollars. If you don't remember anything else that you heard tonight, tell 5 of your friends how important it is that they return the census. And I would be happy, because we need one. Yes, sir?
Is it too late to return yet?
It has not started yet. So I apologize. The reason why I'm talking about something that doesn't happen until next year is because this year was the budget, the year that we passed the budget for next year. So that's why it's really important to talk about it this year. But the census actually will happen in the spring of 2020. And then redistricting, entire statewide redistricting happens based on that information in 2021.
So I got a question there for
Sure.
that time. For this year's census or
So,
actually 2 questions here?
what has happened is someone has decided that we should ask people whether or not they are a citizen in order to fill out their census. It went to the courts, still being deliberated in the courts. So they sent out some tests to see how many they might get back with the question, without the question. There's some organizations that are also trying to see if people will send them back, but that is not the actual 2020 census just yet. And that's another point. Please be leery of any information that you get that is not actually from the Census Bureau. Emails, websites is .gov, .gov if it's actually from them. And if you ever have a question, please let me know. The picture at the bottom was a regional meeting that we had at Norfolk State. So the governor has convened a complete count commission, yes, where we have lots of Hampton Roads representation on that. And they were doing regional meetings to get input from community leaders on how they could do it even better. How can we be community partners? If you are a member of a civic or social organization, raise your hand. We are going to be asking you all who have infrastructure, because you've been doing work in the community for decades, to help with this, because it is so important. So let's say you're knocking on doors for voter registration, then you may also say, hey, don't forget to fill out your census, right? So there'll be room for all of us to come together and work on that. But then also there's a space for equity to talk about this, because it is rural, poor communities and urban areas that often go undercounted, and that makes sense. This year it will be able to be filled out online, which helps if you have broadband access, right? So we need to think out these things, right? So we're gonna really have to pay attention to our rural neighbors out far west, so that we can help them as well if they don't have the broadband access to return theirs. So this is one of my favorite quotes. But how wonderful is it that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world? You can start today. And why is that important? That is important because one of my most favorite things to talk about is advocacy. How can you advocate for the things that you are passionate about? I was invited to speak at the, all of the years are running together. I believe that was 2018. 2018, thank you, you were there. Could have just asked you. 2018 student walkout at Heritage High School, as they were begging the adult decision makers in their lives to take them more seriously than the gun lobby. And no parent wrote those speeches, or the spoken word, or drew the posters. These are coming from the children who are in the schools themselves. And if we can't listen to that, then we have an issue. So I was invited to come out there and speak for that, and just an amazing, amazing group. I've worked with Heritage on quite a few occasions, and I mean, you guys are doing some amazing things there. And so congratulations to you and to Ms. Shamika Gerald, who is the principal there. There are other ways to advocate as well. This is Pastor Howard from First Baptist Church East End. They came up to Richmond. This is on Capitol Square. We got the permits. It's okay, we got the permits. But they had a protest against gun violence. They're right there in Richmond. One of the things that I have learned about the pastors is the mental health impact on pastors for having to eulogize 15 and 16-year-olds. So it's the families, it's the teachers. Gun violence, the effects of gun violence radiate all throughout the community. But they are very active and very concerned about gun violence, even as some of them are gun owners themselves. It's about protecting lives and protecting our youth and keeping them safe. And so they came up, and that was a couple of years ago, but they came up and had that as well, and they were advocating for change. This year it worked. So mostly we have banned the driver's license suspension for certain offenses where fees and fines were not paid. There's still some questions about some processes. We're going to go through the courts and all of that. So it's not fair to say that that fight is over, but it is on. Through the budget language, we are trying to stop suspending people's driver's licenses for their inability to pay fees and fines. Because in my mind, if I owe you money and you keep me from getting to work, does that help or hurt your getting your money back, right? So we got to think about it like that. We were able to protect access to health care. There are several folks who are trying to gut the ACA instead of trying to make it better. I will never say that the ACA is perfect. The Affordable Care Act is not perfect. Obamacare is not perfect. But with Medicaid expansion, we had 400,000 Virginians who were able to get health care, or eligible to get health care, of which I think it was like 220,000 have actually enrolled. Right? So more than 50% have actually enrolled. Those are people that are getting access to benefits that otherwise could not the year before. Well, there are efforts to undermine that and to turn back that. So your advocacy is working on that. There was a bill on I-81. Anybody driven on I-81 in Virginia? Okay? I haven't. But when my colleagues say, hey, we need some help on I-81, here's why, it's a great conversation. But guess what? $28.9 million on that funding bill is going to go to fund an additional segment of 64 expansion. That got me to the table quicker, right? And that kind of regionalism is what it takes to get things done, but also understanding Newport News and Hampton are not the only ones with issues. We need to help our friends out west and other parts of the state. So we were able to get transportation funding from advocates from all over the state that were fighting for that, and the upper part of the project in the 64 worked as well. Teacher raises. We are not where we need to be with education funding. We are not back to the equivalent of pre-recession levels for funding our schools from the state level. There are a lot of local fights happening now over how to make up our budgets for education. Guess where that fight should have started? Richmond, thank you. So now y'all can put it on the localities to come up with millions when they strapped for trying to handle everything else. But how much did we give to Amazon? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, y'all know that number though, right? Okay. And I'm not saying all business development is not good. Of course we need businesses. Of course we need businesses. Especially, we need to invest in more businesses that actually take care of their workers. We can get into a lot of these issues as we talk. But how important is it to invest in public school education, which could be one of the strongest equalizers for people to have opportunity to do better, right? It is our constitutional duty to give good quality education through the public school system. So we have to make sure that we're continuing that. But there was excellent advocacy on the teacher raises part, and so that worked this time. They did get a raise, but I said we should go upward. Total budget funding. So that will be that. So I gave you all some sites. It is very important as a citizen and resident of Virginia, as you navigate your daily life, to know the laws so that you don't accidentally break one, right? But also to know the types of things that are happening in the General Assembly. Like I said, you can go to this website, you can look up information. The Virginia General Assembly website itself has great information, especially for children, or, guys, the best tool that I use to teach how a bill becomes a law is the 4th grade activity book, and I'm usually teaching it to adults, so I have no judgment there. It's a cute little cartoon, you remember it, how a bill becomes a law, just like most of y'all can sing the song about, right. So we just gotta use tips and tricks to remember, but it's really, really important. And then I would also say reach out to organizations that are already doing the work. If you are here as a private citizen and I tell you there were 3,000 bills that were introduced and you're like, oh no, I have 2 jobs, what am I gonna do? Why don't you become a member of an organization that's already plugged into what's happening, right? So that is one thing that you can do to support that. And then also know the effective date. Most bills go into effect July 1st, right? And then for the next steps for 2019, here's some things that you all can do. First, one of the steps that I didn't put on how a bill becomes a law, but it's usually the most important, I learn about issues happening in the community from people that live there. I can not only base my knowledge of this city on how I experience it. So I need you all to talk to me about things that need to be fixed so that I can get ideas for bills. So that's actually where it starts. I have office hours. Tempest is amazing at emails and phone. We are accessible. I typically will answer some DMs and messages, but she doesn't like that because she doesn't have a record of the conversation to actually do the thing that it is that you're asking for. So we do ask that you use the contact information that's on your sheet. But we are accessible, and we want to hear about the things that you're, good things that you're experiencing that we can maybe replicate in other areas of the state. We're trying to make Spark and STEP, go other places because it's so successful. Or things that you're experiencing that need to be fixed. I will help you learn the difference between local, state, and federal, if you don't know, by either sending you to my father, the mayor, or my uncle, the congressman. But between the 3 of us, we handle quite a bit, right? And so while I may not help you get your leaves picked up, I can help you talk about education funding from the state level. I can talk about things that are happening, opioid epidemics, and how we talk about even substance abuse. Where we criminalize some, but talk about mental health with others, right? I can help you learn about the things that happen in Richmond and see how you want to get involved. So I look forward to that. There is a survey that I've been putting out. You may have gotten it on your door, maybe, and returned it, filled it out loud. Oh. So we'll get that link to you. We got quite a few back in, but I think being asked for your opinion might be new for some citizens, so they don't take it as seriously, but I literally read them. Like, I really, really do read them. And then share anything that you've learned today, share it with others. I would love for you all to come back to my events. For how many of you was this your first time you've been to one of my events? Okay. That is the majority of the room. Welcome. I do this a lot, and I do it at varied levels. I also can bring information to you. We didn't dive as deep into bills just yet. We're going to get back to that. But let's say you have an organization that deals on one specific topic and you want to know bills about that one specific topic, call me. Let's get it set up. Like, I really, really want to make sure that as many residents as possible know what their government is doing for them and what their government could be doing for them if we were asked, right? And so just share information. Do not assume that anybody knows anything. I would rather them receive it twice than never at all. And then these are just some pictures from the year. So this is actually the Qualified Education Student Loan Ombudsman. That's the guy that got hired from the bill where we established the office. He has an entire team waiting to take questions from Virginia education loan borrowers about repayment options. Everybody in here knows somebody paying $1 or something back for some education loans. So I will be sure to repost information, but I posted about that and how you can call him. This was one of my excellent interns that helped us, Emily Weisenberger. This is me speaking from the floor. This is from the January town hall that we had at South Morrison. This is me speaking at the Legislative Black Caucus fundraiser. And this is just an arbitrary picture of my nephew because he's so awesome and everybody needs to know who Asa is. But when my nephew was born, almost 4 years ago, that is when my life changed. I didn't have to stay up with him like my brother and my sister-in-law, but my life changed because now I think of everything through the guise of how can this help our future? How can this help the youth? And I have a very, very, very new outlook on we can't just live for right now. You know, we gotta make it better for our kids and make it better for their kids, and all of that. So it just was a wonderful experience, not only because I get to absolutely spoil this child and send him back to New York, but I really get to get that new outlook on life, and it has changed a lot of the things that I do. I do want to pause for questions. I know that was a lot of information that we covered. We can go back to bills. We can have side conversations afterwards, but that was the crux of the introductory information. There is a second, third, fourth, fifth level of this information. If you want me to sit down, show you code, show you the changes, talk about how the bill was, show you video from subcommittee to passage, I can do that. And you can bring me out. I can also do that this year, and we can all come back together. But I saw quite a few new names on this, roster for this event, so I wanted to give some introductory information. But we are available to give all kinds of information. Some of the other fights that I had that didn't go quite as I had expected was on the redistricting as it pertains to the right now redistricting. That's not the redistricting in 2021. That's the right now redistricting based on the racial gerrymanders. So that's a whole conversation where the Black Caucus got involved. There's bills. I had a bill on emergency preparedness. So if FEMA is the federal level of emergency management. They are made to they're required to produce emergency preparedness information in multiple languages. The state is not. I had an apartment complex in my district that I knocked on doors for a different reason. They did not know a hurricane was coming. They did not know that they lived either in or near evacuation zone A. They speak majority Spanish as their first language. The bill also included those who are hard of hearing and may need things in American Sign Language or Braille, and it also included those that may have developmental challenges to where a commercial in English just isn't all that they need. That bill died because the people on the subcommittee said, well, we don't need that in our area. There are conversations that we're having in Richmond that you all need to be a part of, especially if we're not gonna fix this little thing called climate change, flooding, hurricanes, all that. It's just gonna get worse. So what are we doing to make sure that people are safe? All people are safe. So these are the types of conversations that we're having that I would love for you to be a part of, but I am literally gonna shut up now for any questions.
Gigi.
Before I take questions, I am going to introduce Giselle Russell, who is with Congressman Scott's office, and we welcome her here this evening. Thank you. And so if anybody asks a federal question, I'm going to direct you her way. But are there any questions? Yes.
New lesbian educational new position. Is that students paying back only Virginia state education funds?
From my understanding, and I asked that exact same question, from my understanding, if you are a Virginian who is paying back loans, period, you are able to call them. Yep. And they don't even ask how old the loan is. Yes.
Basketball games, we hear all the time about how many billions of dollars that the lottery has contributed to education. But yet, I know of teachers who have to buy supplies out of their own pocket. Where is that billions of dollars going?
So here's the issue. Lottery money does, in fact, go to education, but it has strings. Prior to when I got into the General Assembly, in order to receive some of that money, the locality had to put up a match. So if you don't have any money, you weren't getting any money. But I would go even further up. That has changed. A lot has changed. We've made progress. I would go further up to our funding formula in general in education. So we need to give more money to education. But we also need to make it more fair how those resources are put out, so that if you already have a lot of money, you're not just getting more of that money. We're actually targeting it to where the money needs to go. Yes, a lot of teachers I know, to include my retired teacher mother, a lot of their money that comes in goes right back into the classroom. And so that's where I think the teacher raises are helping, but we've got to decide that that is our priority and that it's not okay to keep it going the way that it is. But I can in fact say that some lottery dollars do go towards education. That's true. But it's in a defunct system that we need to update so that it's more equitable in how the money is given out and that more money is being given out. Any other questions?
I do voter registration.
Yes.
And I run into a lot of people that are trying to get their rights back, felonies trying to get their rights back. And I understand that our former governor, Terry McCullough, had introduced a bill, but the state Supreme Court, knocked it down to give rights back to felonies. And so it's still day by day or month by month process.
So I'm just going to adjust just a little bit of what you said. So it wasn't that the governor had put in a bill. The governor right now, the position has constitutional power to return voting rights to citizens. But it is up to the governor's discretion. So what happened was legislators put up proposed constitutional amendments to make it an automatic process. There was one that was like, if you are disenfranchised and lose your rights because you got a felony, once you're off that, you're off probation, you get your rights back. That was one bill. There were some of us that supported a bill that you never lose your rights. If you were 18 and you live in Virginia, you get to vote, right? Those did not pass. And so right now the Constitution stays the same, and the governor has the discretion to return voting rights to ex-offenders. This governor supports that, and Secretary of the Commonwealth, Kelly Thomason, is who runs that office and that undertaking, and they are continuing to do thousands upon thousands upon thousands of restoration of rights. Here is the catch. In order to get your rights restored, what has to happen? You have to know that you can ask for it. I, in my day job, have an organization called Virginia Block, and I cannot tell you how many people have been off probation for decades and never knew that they could just go online and ask for their rights back. And so the work that you're doing is important. Voter registration is important. I would just ask, make sure if somebody says, nah, I can't do that, you follow up with the conversation, well, did you know you could get your rights back, so that we can do it at the same time. So once they get their rights restored, they can then register, and if we do that now, they can register in time to vote this November. This November, yep. But we are still gonna continue to fight for that. For those of us that believe in second chances and believe in getting those rights done, we're not going anywhere. We're gonna continue to fight for it, but right now, it is going well because we have a governor that does believe in that. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I had a follow-up question.
Sure.
Is there any legislation going to be enacted this year in reference to the payday loans and the contact title loans? I know North Carolina said out, and they were out. Why can't we do that, man?
Okay. There are 100 delegates. There are 40 senators. Any idea that you think is really good has to get 51 and 21. Right now, those bills cannot get 51 and 21. And even, I'll back up even further. It actually has to get 4 votes out of that subcommittee to even get to the whole thing. So a lot of those bills die in subcommittee on party line votes. And so I will just say November is coming, and you'll have your voice. but we'll continue to fight for that because the exploitive processes that those companies go through have been put a little bit at bay from how it was maybe 10 years ago, but they still exist and they're still preying on people. We were able to pass legislation that protected the military, you know, so we can pass other bills, right? But it is something I will tell you that is still on our radar as soon as we can get the votes in order to enact more of those. I'm gonna stick around, so if anybody else has a question, but wait, don't leave. Just want to remind you that of all the things that you heard, if there was something that struck you at your core, that is probably where you're supposed to be doing some advocacy work. If there's something that is personally impacting you, it's probably where you can do some advocacy work because you can speak about it from first person. And just remember to ask the questions. If you had a question and you were sitting here and you're like, no, I'm not going to do that. Send me an email. We can answer your email. We can get you the question. If I don't have the answer, I have lots of friends and lots of agencies and all of the things we can get you the answer. And please remember to stay engaged, come back to our next events, and then I will leave this slide up here for our contact information, which is also on your agenda. I do want to thank you for your time and attention this evening. And who learned something new? I have done my job. Please come back to the next one because we're just going to keep going even deeper. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, and we'll see you at the next one.